Apple is set to unveil their AI strategy on June 10th at their upcoming developer conference. At the same time, that some very interesting connections have come up between the Rndr network, their new partner Stability.ai, and Apple themselves. So in today's episode of the Everything Crypto Show, I'm going to break down all the connections between Apple and the Rndr network and why I believe there could be a potential partnership or collaboration between these two companies. Now, before we hop into the content, just a friendly reminder that I am not a financial advisor. I am simply here for your crypto news and entertainment purposes. And if you do enjoy the content, please consider hitting that sub and like button and turn that notification bell on so you can be notified when all of our latest videos go live on the channel. So we're going to get right into today's altcoin of discussion, and that's going to be the Rndr token. You guys know, if you've been with the channel for a while, that we've been speaking about this altcoin since last year. This is my large cap AI pick for the upcoming bull run, and I do believe that just as it has been one of the best performers, it will continue to be one of the best performers. We can see here it has cooled off over the past week, down about 14%. We actually were looking for this decline back to previous all-time highs, and we did in fact get that full retracement. So I mentioned earlier this week that I did pick up more Rndr on the way down, and we will talk about the technicals at the end of the video, but I do want to just get into the news segment of this video and kind of connect some dots here between Rndr, Stability.ai, and Apple, because we do have Apple announcing their AI event on June 10th. It's going to be taking place, and there are some really interesting, because we do have Apple announcing their upcoming AI conference, which is going to take place on June 10th. And given all the connections we found between Apple and Rndr, I do think there's a good chance that the Rndr token runs up in anticipation of this event, very similarly to how it did for NVIDIA GTC. And more importantly, there could be some sort of partnership announced between the two companies, as well as Stability AI. So we're going to talk about that. And the first thing I do kind of want to just preface this with is the fact that in mid-March, Stability AI, Endeavor, and Rndr Network all partnered up to develop next-gen AI models, because we do have the Apple AI event coming up on June 10th, and I do think that the Rndr token is likely to run up into this event, similarly to how it did with the NVIDIA GTC event. So we're going to just break all this down for you guys. We have this conference coming up on June 10th. They are going to be focused specifically on their AI strategy, because that's what the market wants to hear all about at the moment. And we know here that in mid-March, Stability AI, Otoy, which is kind of like the parent company of Rndr, Endeavor, who owns the UFC and WWE, and the Rndr network, joined forces to develop next-gen AI models, IP rights systems, and open standards powered by decentralized GPU computing, obviously, which would be powered here by the Rndr network's decentralized GPU fleet. So they announced this partnership between industry leaders in open source generative AI models, media and entertainment, and GPU computing to develop and standardize IP rights, production workflows, and infrastructure around emerging AI tech. The partnership leverages Rndr's decentralized GPU network, massively scaling AI training and inference power at cost to help democratize open source, transparent, generative AI technology and provenance systems that will soon impact 3D, VFX, and media production workflows. And here we see a lot of spatial content creation, 3D content, which has been a really big focus for Apple as of late with the Apple Vision Pro, as well as for the Rndr network with the Star Trek holodeck, which we will connect it to in just a minute. But first, I want to just give some context behind exactly how big Stability AI is. So Stable Diffusion, which is their AI image generator, accounts for 12 billion of the 15 billion total images generated by AI last year. So Stable Diffusion here generated about 12.59 billion of these images. Adobe Firefly was in second place with 1 billion. So Stable Diffusion having like over 12 times the AI images generated that Adobe did. DALL-E 2, 916 mil, and then Midjourney, 964 mil. So when you pit Stable Diffusion up against its competitors, and we're not just talking about the smaller competitors, we are talking about some of the biggest tech companies in the world, some of the most influential ones at the moment: Adobe, Midjourney, DALL-E. Stable Diffusion blows them all out of the water by at least 12 times. So this is not a small company by any means. This is a massive partnership for the Rndr network, and I'm not, overstating it when I make that statement. So now I kind of want to talk about the connection between the three. So Rndr, Stability AI, and Apple. So we know Apple has taken an interest in Stable Diffusion since 2022. And we can see here, this is from Jules Urbach in the Telegram chat. And he basically says there is a lot of convergence with Rndr and Apple Vision Pro, but also our neural rendering on faces that was shown at GTC, which we did cover on the channel. That works great in Apple Silicon, and this is another area of enormous potential. You might remember Apple ported Stable Diffusion themselves to Mac/Metal, and you can see it here. This was Apple, so they did in 2022, they actually integrated Stable Diffusion with Core ML on Apple Silicon. So Apple has been interested in Stable Diffusion for quite a while, well before they actually partnered up with the Rndr network. And we know that with this recent proposal, that Stability AI and Stable Diffusion are going to be tapping in to the Rndr network's decentralized GPU fleet for their content creation. Now, if Apple was to tap into Stable Diffusion and then Stable Diffusion taps into the Rndr network, that effectively means that AI generated content coming from Apple would be going through the Rndr network and therefore would be using the Rndr token and burning it as well. So we actually saw here with the launch of the Apple Vision Pro back in early February that on the day of launch, Otoy did have their app on the Apple Vision Pro. Here's an example of something that was actually built with the app here. You can see the archive. And they're basically just highlighting that the Rndr network does in fact have usage with the Apple Vision Pro. And we can see here that they just recently updated us on this. And I mean, look at this content. Like, you can just look at this one over here. I actually want to go ahead and show you guys this one specifically. I mean, this looks amazing. Like, this looks really, really clean, done on the Apple Vision Pro through the Roddenberry archive. And, obviously all frames were rendered on the Rndr network. This looks really, really good. And, I believe as the demand ramps up for this in the future, that it does also mean better things for the Rndr network and just more usage, right? We can take a look at this one as well. It looks really, really good in my opinion. The head movement, the 3D environment. And yeah, we actually saw Jules Urbach, the Rndr CEO, highlighting this here, saying, of course, rendered on Rndr network. So the last thing I want to talk about is this patent that Apple just recently filed. So Apple reveals patent for network interface of compute nodes operable to facilitate rendering. And we can go ahead and just read this right here. The display device is configured to discover via a network interface one or more compute nodes operable to facilitate rendering the three-dimensional content, and receive information identifying abilities of the one or more compute nodes to facilitate the rendering. Okay, so this sounds to me a lot like the Rndr network. Okay, the Rndr network has this massive decentralized GPU fleet, and through the blockchain marketplace for idle GPU compute, people are able to tap into this for content creation and more recently for AI and machine learning tasks, which we've been focusing a lot on recently on the channel. But I don't want to ignore the potential and the demand for content creation as well. And that does seem to be a big area that Apple themselves are targeting. And, just with Apple being one of the biggest companies in the world, therefore, this already makes it a massive market alone. The amount of devices Apple has, the amount of developers that are building on Apple because of their monopoly in the App Store, that alone makes it a big deal in my opinion. And we can see here that Rndr has a massive decentralized GPU fleet They have about 5,600 total nodes, so 5,600 idle GPUs that are offering that power for these AI purposes. We've seen 47,800 Rndr burned cumulatively here since the migration to Solana and the burn mint equilibrium. And this does also move in tandem with the actual usage of the network. So the more the network is being used, the more we actually see the burns take place. And if we do see the Apple tapping into the Rndr network, these burns and the usage of the token itself could really accelerate. So speaking of the token, I do want to wrap things up now, taking a look at the price action. And, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, this token is down about 15% over the past week. And it is down about 30% at this point from those from the highs it put in here at about the mid $13 range. So I tweeted here on March 14th. This was actually even before it hit an all-time high and came all the way back down. I said I could see a scenario where Rndr pulls back 30% following the NVIDIA GTC conference, shakes out all the weak hands, all while bouncing off previous all-time highs at 880 as a level of support and starting the next leg up to the $20 zone. And if we take a look here, actually, let me actually go back to my Twitter. I didn't mean to exit that out because I want to showcase our tweet from yesterday, which kind of provided an update on that chart that we did post back in mid-March. Let's go to media. Yeah. So you can basically see here that, following that tweet in mid-March, the full retrace we were looking for did happen yesterday. We did, in fact, hit that $8.80 level. If we take a look here at the chart, you can see that we did retrace and actually perfectly validate it as a level of support. So in my opinion, you see this prior all-time high in 2021 acting as big resistance. We see it slice right through it like butter here on the NVIDIA hype on the way up to the conference. Rndr peaks out at about $13.50, comes all the way back down to $8.80, validates it as a level of support. So flipping that resistance into support and then continuing on the move higher looks really bullish to me, in my opinion. And yeah, I mean, it didn't have to come back down to test that all-time high, but I was just saying that there was a chance it occurred, and if it did, that would present a pretty interesting buying opportunity, in my opinion, which I did, in fact, capitalize on. Now, the one other thing I do think it's worth mentioning is that, Rndr just pulled back 35% from all-time highs. In the last 18 months, Rndr has seen at least 7 pullbacks of 30% or more. Okay, so you can see that here in late 2022, we had a 66% decline. In early 2023, 59%. In mid 2023, 37%. From June to about August, it declined 57%. And then more recently here, from late December into early of this year, with a 36% decline, another 29% decline, and the most recent pullback of 34.5%. So, you can see that this altcoin does have a history of pulling back 30+%. But if we take a look at its performance, we started covering this altcoin on the channel in 2023. I want to take a look at the performance since early 2023 for this coin. And we can see that even with all these multiple 30% pullbacks, this coin is still up 2,500% from its bear market low. So the pullbacks are just all a part of the price action, and if you can handle the volatility on the way down, you do also get to experience that volatility right on the way back up, okay? So in my opinion, just another classic pullback for Rndr, one that in the long run is going to just really kind of be shadowed out by the amount of moves this coin makes to the upside. Even with the pullback, this thing is clearly in an uptrend, and I don't think that's changing. I think that we did just see a nice bounce off that prior area of support, and given if the overall market conditions do stay bullish and if we continue to move higher, then I do think that this makes a run back up to that $13.50 range. Now, if the market does flip bearish and we do break down here, that would just present another buying opportunity, in my opinion. But as always, I will keep you guys updated on the latest news and price action updates for this altcoin. So on that note, I hope you did enjoy the content in today's video. I hope you are all staying happy, safe, and healthy, and I hope to catch you in the next one. Peace out for now.